All right, good evening. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight for our virtual event, Climbing Mount Hood with Portland Mountain Rescue. We'll be talking about routes beyond the south side tonight. So I'm Jess Joyner with Mountain Shop, and tonight we're joined by Matt Zavortink and Scott Branscum, both heavily involved volunteers with Portland Mountain Rescue, as well as avid climbers of Mount Hood. If you're ever up there on a nice day or climbing, or maybe not even on such a nice day, you'll probably find these two roaming around the mountain on the upper flanks of Mount Hood. So these two have probably collectively climbed the majority of routes of the mountain. So we're really excited to hear from them and get more info on their experience. And they're going to talk about some lesser climbed routes and hopefully inspire you to dig deeper into the mountaineering world and learn some new skills, explore some other sides of Mount Hood. So with that, I'll pass things over to Matt and Scott. Welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Hello. All right, we'll get started. First, we're going to just go over what we're going to talk about. So we have a quick little intro. Then we're going to talk about kind of required gear and skills for climbing Mount Hood. We'll talk about the Mount Hood weather patterns, again, briefly. Then we will go over a lot of the hazards, the different hazards you might encounter while climbing Mount Hood. We have a lot of slides about the hazards, but I think they'll go pretty quickly. We will talk about some sort of peculiar or idiosyncratic challenges of climbing Mount Hood. And we'll go over a bunch of specific routes. We're not really planning to do like a textbook style, like go through every route and say all the information about it. But we will do a little bit of that, and we're happy to answer any questions about other routes. We've tried to keep this presentation like as interactive as possible. So we're going to be asking you to like type things in the Zoom chat quite often. And if you have a question and you type it, we may decide to answer it right away or sort of save it for the end of the section. If we forget for whatever reason, just type it again. All right, so just a quick introduction. Today we are here on behalf of Portland Mountain Rescue. Portland Mountain Rescue is a nonprofit, 100% volunteer organization. Our motto is saving lives through rescue and mountain safety education. This presentation being part of the mountain safety education part of that. We specialize in high angle rescue in the alpine, so in environments with snow and ice and using ropes. We're currently affiliated with the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. So if you look at the map of the county lines, you'll see Clackamas County includes the west and southern sides of Mount Hood. So those are the areas where we traditionally respond. And Portland Mountain Rescue is accredited by an organization called the Mountain Rescue Association. That's the blue logo, which accredits most of the mountain rescue teams in the United States. All right, and now we want to know a little bit about you. If you have any specific thing you are hoping to learn about, this would be a good time to type it in the chat. And if possible, we'll try to like adapt what we're doing. So if there's any like routes you're specifically interested in, any specific hazards or gear or anything, I'll wait a second for people to type.
A lot of good ones in there already.
Yeah, there's a lot of good. I just got like mesmerized reading all the things. Okay. Okay, so it's kind of a mix. There's some pointed questions already. All right, good. Thanks for that. if we don't get to something that you were hoping to learn about, there will be time for questions at the end, and yeah, we'll try to cover everything. So we'll start just briefly talking about sort of gear and skills. There's some pretty funny questions in there, so thank you if you sent one of those. All right, just jumping right in. So we just have one slide on sort of technical climbing gear on Mount Hood. So when we're talking about climbing the routes that are not the south side, the routes other than the south side, typically these are going to require more gear. We just have a list of some of the basic stuff here. 2 ice tools. You might want more technical crampons than your sort of glacier crampons. You'll probably be carrying a rope and some means to attach it to the mountain, maybe ice screws or pickets or both. Of course, a belay, rappel device, etc. This is pretty self-explanatory, I think. If you have like specific gear questions, we can try to answer them or provide our opinion. I think this is one of those things that there are so many strong opinions online you can learn from. If anyone has any gear questions, this is like the briefest part of the presentation. Okay, yeah, so someone says dual or mono point crampons. Of course, this is a question. Yeah, so for people who are doing like very difficult ice climbing or mixed climbing, particularly mixed climbing where you're using your crampons on rock, they really like to have one vertical front point because it's easier to slot the front point in a crack in the rock. I don't have a strong opinion about this on Mount Hood. Most people are not doing those things. And in fact, some people will say, since the conditions on Mount Hood, typically there's like a lot of, you're putting your crampons on lots of things where you're not really sure how stable it is. So you might want more contact actually. So that's kind of my non-answer. Okay, yeah, a bunch of people had questions about the black spider. We'll cover that. Okay, now we're moving on to technical climbing skills. This slide, the next couple slides, these are kind of like a big disclaimer. These are not like the fun slides, and hopefully actually you'll read these slides and you'll think like this is kind of patronizing, but we have to say it. Yeah, so the second bullet point, Mount Hood is not really an appropriate place to be like learning new climbing skills. If you're hoping to pursue climbing in the Alpine, especially like all these people asking questions about the black spider, you know, it's really important to learn and practice the skills in a really controlled environment from a qualified source like a mentor or a guide. There are a lot of good places to learn to ice climb, this being one skill that we frequently see people sort of learning for the first time as they're doing it. You know, Ouray is a great place to learn to ice climb. Hyalite is a great place to learn to ice climb. Mount Hood, not really a great place to learn to ice climb. We'll talk about this more. So yeah, hopefully this doesn't apply to you. Yeah, so it's really common to see people sort of exceeding their ability on moderate Mount Hood routes. So this slide, we just sort of wanted to show like a comparison of what the climbing will feel like. So a lot of the popular routes, like say the North Face gullies, if you are in a really experienced group that's, you know, working well together and has all the skills, this climbing the North Face gullies, it's going to feel like a relaxed day out. There's kind of fun, controlled climbing on moderate terrain. There's good protection when you need it. The transitions between, say, Glacier Travel and pitching it out and simuling, they're all really smooth and efficient. Shouldn't be a big deal. On the other hand, if you're in like an inexperienced group and you're kind of learning these things for the first time, you know, it's going to feel a lot different. It's going to be like a really long, exhausting day. The climbing is going to be kind of scary. You're going to feel like you spent a lot of time in no fall terrain. There's all this effort required to sort of manage the rope and the gear and switch between the different rope systems. And I'm saying this all from basically my own personal experience, having been in this inexperienced side of things myself. And of course, we want to be more like the people on the left. So yeah, the conclusion to this is just when you're doing technical alpine climbing, I think you really want to be using skills that you've already learned and practiced. You really don't want to be like learning these things on Mount Hood for the first time. So this is our big disclaimer. Are there any questions about required skills or where to learn them? There's a couple questions. Someone asked about the North Face Gully. I'm going to write that down and we'll cover that later. All right, moving on. Scott is going to talk a bit about Mount Hood's weather patterns.
Cool. So yeah, understanding the weather patterns is going to help us understand some of the hazards that we might face when we're up there. And in winter storms, the wind typically blows in what direction from what direction? And if anybody know, can anybody put in the chat, what direction does the winter storm wind typically blow? Into your face, yes, Nick Davis. Yeah. Yeah, west to east. That's right. And that's why, you know, some of the routes on the western face, like Reed, Headwall, Luthold, there can be a lot of snow concerns and avalanche concerns on that aspect. If you've ever been on a lenticular up on Mount Hood, have you been in a lenticular cloud, that you know that it can be somewhat smoky looking or it can be a complete whiteout. It just sort of depends. In my experience, when I've been up there when that's happened, I've tried to sort of, you know, make haste, kind of get down in short order, but safely. Let's see what's next. Yeah, so if you had to guess, the photo on the left, what side of the mountain would you think that would be on? And the photo on the right, what side of the mountain? Okay, yeah, there you go. Somebody got it. South and east. So yeah, the photo on the left is from the south side and the photo on the right is from the east side. And those two photos are pretty close together in time too. Let's see. Are you doing this one, Matt, or me?
I can take it. So the difference in the previous two photos was that the photo on the left from the south side, someone said that was just the pearly gates. You were right. I think that was the left pearly gate. So there, everything is covered with rime ice. Rime is like a defining feature of Mount Hood. So rime is basically, well, here I have, so the precise definition: formed by supercooled water vapor freezing to a surface. So frozen clouds, basically. Rime is going to form on the windward side of objects. So on Mount Hood, we're usually going to see it on the west and south sides, less so on the other sides. And the rime can be pretty solid or it can be really brittle. So it should always be treated with a lot of suspicion and skepticism. Here's just a photo of a unique rime feature. And we're going to keep talking about rime sort of over and over again throughout the presentation because it's just such a common thing on Mount Hood. All right, now we're moving on to the hazard. So yeah, just to recap really quick, we just talked about two weather patterns. So the direction of the wind, always coming from the west, going to the east during the winter, and the rime ice. These are just two things that we always want to keep in mind, sort of whenever you're on Mount Hood. Most of the hazards are influenced by these two things. Okay, so first we're going to have a few interactive photos. I think we have 5 or 6 photos. So I want everyone to just try to type in the chat what you think the hazards are in the photos. And I'll say one thing: most of these photos are mine. So everyone has permission to, you know, if you think something looks like really bad or unsafe, feel free to call that out. We won't be upset. All right, so yeah, just in the chat, we can speculate on what the hazards are. Yeah, I think there were a lot of good answers.
Yeah, for sure.
Being on Hood for the first time. It's not his first time. Yeah, so okay, clearly the ice above this climber looks like rime. And these formations in the back, I think everyone can see my cursor. The formations in the back are in the sun. So someone says it looks a little late in the day, which I agree with. The main thing I'm worried about here is like falling rime. A couple of people said the person is in like a chute, which is also true. That's one of the things we're going to talk about. Most of the moderate climbing on Hood is in these like sort of garbage chutes, unfortunately. One thing I would also add to this, it looks like there's some rocks right sort of under his feet. So I'd be a little suspicious of whatever the medium is that we're climbing on. It could be really thin ice or thin snow coverage. All right, here's another photo. Same person. Maybe a similar photo, but there is one other big hazard here to talk about. Sunburn, yeah. Okay, yeah, a bunch of people said fumaroles. So yeah, good. This photo is from somewhere on the east side of the crater, just some kind of random chute over there. And we have this place where the rime is kind of missing. And there's just this exposed rock. So this is some kind of volcanic vent. This isn't one of the named fumaroles, but they do occur in other places on the mountain. So we were negotiating some rime here that seemed kind of hollow and undercut. Here it's pretty obvious because there's this big chunk missing, but all right, this is a great thing to be thinking about. Next photo. All right, hazards. Yeah, you can, I think saying, it's steep, that is a legitimate, that is a hazard, like recognizing that the climbing is hard. All right, this one I put in mostly just because I wanted to see what people said. I don't know, to me, this looks fine. It's shaded. Someone says it looks cold. It was pretty cold. It looks like good ice. There's an ice screw. I don't have a problem with this. Someone says potentially thin. Yeah. Okay, there's like some rocks sort of showing through the ice. So I think that's a concern. Also, maybe the little bit of like snow or ice like glazed on the rock everywhere could flake off, but they'd be small pieces. Someone says, what route is this? This is somewhere on the Elliott head wall. Someone says too late in the day. Maybe. All right, this is an easy one. What is the hazard? Yeah, obviously. Yeah, Josh, huge rocks falling and sliding.
At some point it turns into boulder fall and not just
rock
fall.
This is beneath illumination rock, so there's this huge piece back here that had obviously fallen and slid. All right, I think this is the last one for now. What are the hazards? Yeah, okay. Someone says bergschrund, or there's some kind of crack here, a bergschrund or crevasse. People are correctly recognizing this as the reed, or people on the way to Lutholds. This is actually not my photo. Some people are saying they should be roped up. All right. Yeah. Good. Oh, we have one more. One more. What are the hazards? Frozen mud. Yeah, okay, it's obviously super sunny in this photo, and we're on some kind of route with bad rock, exposed rocks that look pretty loose. So this one's pretty obvious as well. Someone says this could be thin. Yeah, maybe. Like up here, there's clearly some rocks sticking through the ice. So okay. All right, here are the hazards we're going to cover in a little more detail. All the typical objective hazards on Mount Hood are amplified a little bit on routes that aren't the south side. So we're going to talk about weather, fumaroles, avalanches, falling debris, glaciers. We have one slide on sort of the greater rescue complexity if something were to go wrong. This whole thing is kind of also true for subjective hazards. To climb things besides the south side, we need, maybe better climbing skills and technical knowledge and all those things. All right. So yeah, first we'll talk about some problematic weather. Hopefully this is kind of review for everybody, but of course we have to go through it. So we'll talk about two kinds of problematic weather. Whiteouts. Whiteouts can develop pretty quickly. You can be somewhere where it's sunny, and then 30 minutes later you might be engulfed in a cloud. I think the most frequent cause of whiteouts on Mount Hood is going to be high winds forming lenticular clouds over the summit. We had a photo of that before. Another type of possibly problematic weather is extreme cold or storms. Today, we usually know when these things are coming. They're pretty predictable with today's weather models. So I think these are becoming less of a big issue as time goes on. Okay, here's someone approaching the approaching the summit through the north face. What's like the concern here? Responding to one question in the chat. Okay, yeah, so lots of people are saying, well, it's windy on the ridge line. Yeah, one person says clouds are forming. Also, you can't see what weather is rolling in. Yeah, so this looks really windy. In this GIF, we're like a couple hundred feet beneath the summit, and then here's descending the old chute. The clouds have started sort of engulfing everything. And then this is a little while later beneath Crater Rock. So this, yeah, it's just, again, about whiteouts. If it's really windy, the lenticular cloud over the summit, this is a thing that catches a lot of people. Okay, and then, yeah, maybe everyone can speculate in the chat. What is the typical Portland Mountain Rescue call that involves whiteouts? There's kind of one classic call that happens over and over again. Yeah, if you said lost, you can be more specific. It's a specific type of being lost, or a specific location where people get lost. Yeah, all right, so lots of people are describing going down the fall line, which leads to the west of Timberline Lodge. We have a photo to illustrate this in a second, but there are some easy ways to avoid this hazard. Use your smartphone or your GPS device to navigate. You can also use a compass if you are at sort of the base of Crater Rock. where you normally like exit the crater on the south side route. Your compass, if you just go magnetic south, you end up right at Timberline Lodge. So should be pretty easy to do even if you can't see anything.
I'm just going to add one thing. Folks could, sorry, that's my cat. You could also add waypoints in your GPS device for landmarks on the south side if you do find yourself in a whiteout. So the top of Palmer, Silcox, and you can just make one for the lodge itself. But you also need to be able to shoot a magnetic bearing too. But having options is good.
Okay, yeah, one more bullet point. Obviously, if you find the top of the lift, that's a good way to guide yourself back to the lodge. So here's a photo of Mississippi Head. So that, yeah, this is basically the source of a lot of these calls. You can sort of imagine if you were at the base of Crater Rock up here and you just dropped like a big bouncy ball, it would roll down to the top of Mississippi Head, the cliffs, and then go over the cliffs. So when people descend in whiteouts, they frequently end up over here. I think we're not allowed to talk about it yet, but there was a very recent PMR call involving this. Actually, someone beneath Mississippi Head down here. So this is still a common thing that happens, I don't know, about once a year. All right, we'll talk about winter storms as well. With today's forecasting tools, it should be pretty easy to avoid getting caught in storms. So I don't know, we should speculate, why does this still happen? Because it does still happen. If you want to type in the chat, what do people do that causes them to get caught in storms? Yeah, I like non-refundable airfare. That's a very good answer. Yeah, people climbing in short weather windows, like trying to sneak in your climb, or yeah, inflexibly planned climbs, like I'm going to climb Cooper Spur on February 20th, and then you go and do it kind of regardless. People are also saying things in the chat that I didn't put on the slide, like people just don't check the forecast. Thought there was one really good one. Yeah, like getting behind schedule. Okay, yeah, here's a photo from last year. This was actually June, the beginning of June, so I wouldn't expect like there to be super bad storms. But here are two people who were caught in a storm and called PMR. And I just put this photo in here. You can see the person on the right, their ski poles are now covered with rime. So this is like how much rime formed just in the time it took this person to walk out of the crater. So you can imagine it gets pretty cold. Okay. We'll talk just briefly about weather resources. So the three standard resources that I think everyone is checking: mountainforecast.com, the NOAA point forecast. I'm going to jump to the last bullet point. The NOAA point forecast, if you click on this link, or you Google NOAA Mount Hood, you can click on the Mount Hood summit and it gives you a forecast for that point. That forecast is generated sort of automatically through some kind of computer program. If you read NWAC and you read the weather forecast section there, my understanding is that it's written by NOAA meteorologists looking at weather data. So yeah, NWAC and NOAA are sort of similar, but one is a little more human. The NWAC forecast is more human. So yeah, people in the chat are saying, don't trust mountain forecast. Yeah, I always look at all of them. And then here's another thing that I think people should know about. This is from the University of Washington, and it's called the time height forecast. So allegedly, this is what Timberline Mountain Guides uses. One interesting thing about this forecast is it often shows these kind of hidden weather windows, where if you look at NOAA or mountain forecast, it just says like snow or rain or whatever. looking at the graph on the right, which is very hard to read, but basically that the dark green is going to be rain or precipitation. So sometimes you'll see like precipitation, but it's all sort of underneath, say like the 850 number. And this would be a day where like maybe it's sort of socked in up to the top of Palmer, and then above that it's actually clear and sunny. So this model will show things like that the others don't. This graph is very difficult to read and very unintuitive. If you Google better PNW weather forecasting Cascade climbers, you can go read the thread on cascadeclimbers.com and start learning how to read this from there. I think this is very accurate and not many people know about it yet. All right, moving on. Scott's going to talk about fumaroles.
Yeah, so people generally think of the fumaroles as a Southside hazard, and they are, as far as we know. Those are sort of some of the largest ones on the mountain, and the ones that are encountered most by people on Southside routes and people descending the Southside from other routes. So they're basically an area that emits these two different types of gases, hydrogen sulfide and sulfur dioxide. And you've more than likely been able to smell that if you've ever climbed the Southside and you've gotten up into Devil's Kitchen. Sometimes you can even smell it down at the lodge. It's a hazard similar to standard crevasse, and that's true because they can melt holes into tunnels under the snowpack. Sometimes those can be hidden by thin snow bridges. And on some of the routes we're going to talk about today, that's a concern for approaching some of those other routes, is that they're in areas that not a lot of people travel through. So you might not necessarily have a burned in boot pack to show you the kind of the way through it. Those gases can be deadly. This is a system, PMR has a system to monitor, measure, check the levels of things. I'm still personally learning about that system. I don't know a lot about it yet. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that, but Matt might be able to speak more about the sort of techniques for that.
I'll just say one thing about the gas levels. So we have a couple different types of gas monitor to measure the levels. And so our old gas monitor, on Mount Hood, we mainly have hydrogen sulfide, H2S, which is the rotten egg smell. So our old gas monitor, it was like some kind of industrial model designed for workplaces. And so according to OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health, whatever, you can only have 100 parts per million of H2S. And if you get over 100 parts per million, then there's just no acceptable amount of time that you can work in that environment. So obviously for PMR, we're not really working. Like if someone has fallen into the fumarole and we're trying to go in there, we might want to go in if the limit is over 100 parts per million. But the point of this whole story is the old gas monitor we had, sometimes when we measured the levels, it would max out. It would just say 100 parts per million. It's unsafe. You can't be in there. Now we have a new gas monitor that goes above 100 parts per million. So I think we're not really sure. No one is really sure like how bad this is, but sometimes it can be really bad. There are some very old stories of people falling in and dying, presumably due to the gas. And it just depends a lot on how the tunnels are formed, if they sort of help collect the gas or if it's like a more open space that vents it easily.
And wouldn't the wind play into that as well, Matt?
Yeah.
So most people probably recognize this photo, although it's pretty late season. Where are the two fumaroles located in this photo, and what are they called? You can put that in the chat. Yeah. Yeah. Devil's Kitchen and Hot Rocks.
I'll add one thing to this as well, which is it seems like the Devil's Kitchen fumarole, if you've been up there recently, like in the last couple of years, you may have noticed this. The Devil's Kitchen fumarole seems to be like undercutting the snow sort of where I drew this arrow. So like the path that everybody just walks up to get onto Hog's Back. Now everyone is walking over some big chamber in there that I think is caused by the fumarole melting things out. So we do kind of know where these are, and it's a pretty well documented, well-known hazard, but they still do some unpredictable things, especially as the glacier in here is kind of shrinking. So it's always something to be concerned about.
Let's see. Does anybody know of any non-standard routes, non-south-side routes that have fumaroles that come to mind?
I guess we already gave the answer away to that.
Yeah, some of them, yeah.
Yeah, people say why east? Anything that gains like the east side of the crater.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's a photo from on top of the crater where you can see there's kind of like this undercut area. In my experience, there's usually not a lot of snow accumulation up here. So typically there's nothing really deep to fall into, but almost every time I've been up here, I've punched through into something. Someone else that says Crater Rock. Yeah, I think if you try to get on top of Crater Rock, you probably walk over a lot of undercut stuff.
Definitely.
Okay, we'll move on and talk about avalanches. Many routes on Hood hold significant avalanche danger. And again, we have to have a little sort of disclaimer. There's no substitute for qualified avalanche training. Here's a photo sort of looking down Leuthold's couloir, but you can see this big tongue of avalanche debris. There also might be a person in a crevasse. I'm not really sure. This is an old photo. Okay, here's a photo just from NWAC of, this was from last year. So we have sort of Cooper Spur on the left, and you can see the two north face gullies on the right. And then you can see this big avalanche crown, this whole face here sort of slid. And this was the recent photo from NWAC. Here is the Black Spider. This was this occurred during the last big round of storms. So there's this huge crown at the top of the cirque. They were saying it's probably 10 or 15 feet high. So yeah, lots of routes have avalanche danger. Sorry, I should rephrase that. All of the routes have avalanche danger. We should remember the typical wind direction. So the wind is usually coming from the west to the east. So sort of typically we would think the east side is going to be the wind loaded side. So these would be the routes like Y-East, the Y-East face, and then the Newton-Clark head wall. But also this is a photo of the Reed head wall. And that, yeah, so this is on the windward side. The wind is sort of blowing into this face. But I think it's just such a large feature that this also kind of collects snow. So I think most of the people who are always climbing up on Mount Hood, they all avoid the eastern and western sides after storms. Here is a photo from May 2020. And you can see it's a little hard to see. It helps me if I like change the angle of my computer screen, but you can see this big tongue of avalanche debris down here. So this was from a rescue call where two people were climbing Leuthold's couloir and triggered an avalanche. And the forecast showed like less than a foot of snow 2 days before. So it didn't seem like a super concerning amount of snow, but it was right after a storm. And it was late in the day. Anyway.
Wouldn't that be outside of their NWAC's reporting time frame as well?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, there wasn't necessarily that resource to have.
Yeah, I think there wasn't any NWAC. Yeah, someone is asking about that in the chat. So yeah, final thoughts. Always check NWAC before climbing. Of course, we should all know that the avalanche forecast it's not really supposed to apply to the high alpine, but typically in the Alpine, any sort of problems that we might have at lower elevation, they could be magnified. They could be a lot worse. Someone asked if that would, a couple questions about what type of avalanche that was. I'm not sure. This is my photo, and I forgot my transceiver, so I was stuck at Illumination Saddle. I couldn't go over there, so I didn't see it up close. I had to take a nap during the rescue. Okay, if you want to pursue winter climbing on Hood, qualified avalanche instruction is highly recommended. But I think there are some PMR people in the meeting. If one of them knows what kind of slide that is, you should tell us in the chat. I think it was a slab, actually. Okay, Scott's going to talk about Rockfall.
Yeah, it's always always a hazard on the Cascade volcanoes. You probably witnessed it, experienced it yourself in some form. South side routes largely safe. Yeah, hazard exists from beneath crater rock up until the summit rim. So yeah, but that also includes Old Chute. That includes the Pearly Gates, West Crater Rim, anything with these giant rime towers overhead, which is pretty much all of it above crater rock. Other routes may contain significantly more exposed terrain. That's definitely true. Depending on, and some of the routes that we're talking about tonight fall into that category. Let's see.
Here we have a silly interactive slide. Your friend says he climbed Devil's Kitchen head wall, variation 1, last weekend. That's the slot in the middle of the photo. He said it was great. You get there and it looks like this. Is it a good idea or no? What are the clues?
Dirty runnels.
Yeah, that someone says it looks like poo. Yeah. Yeah, the brown streaks are generally a sign that there's been a lot of rockfall. Yeah, so really the rockfall, it's going to be a problem on any route that's not like cemented by rime. Where things are held together by rime, then we have a different problem. Where they're not held together by rime, all the rock on Mount Hood should be treated with a lot of suspicion. All right, yeah, now we'll talk about the rime. So falling ice on Hood is typically rime. We have 3 photos. Try to assess the rime in the following photos. This is a little silly, but you could say, oh, that looks solid. That looks really not solid or brittle, or yeah, just try to guess. Is it solid rime or is it not solid rime, or somewhere in the middle? Okay, yeah, it seems like there's a consensus in the chat. Yeah, this was really brittle. Someone says I would climb. So I actually, yeah, this is the left pearly gate. This is, I think, the closest I've been to the summit without actually going to the summit, because I was just touching these sort of palm tree like features, and they just break off. Like you touch it and it breaks off. So yeah, this was not good. Yeah, very, very brittle. I think this photo was in the Mountain Shop like social media today. So I guess that tells you that it's pretty solid. Here's someone rappelling off of a rime mushroom. All right, and we have one more. This piece of rime above this guy's head.
Looks sketchy.
Yeah, okay, people don't like
Just
this one. I agree. So this looks like, late season, because there's like this random blob of rime, but then no rime on the surrounding rocks. So like the rime that was covering all the other rocks has already fallen off, and it's just a matter of time until this one. All right, let's see. We have more things about falling rime. What observable factors typically make rime less stable? So yeah, this is a good place to just type lots of things in the chat. What are we looking for that's making it less stable? Fellow climbers. That's a good one. That's not on the list. So here are all the things I wrote. Newly formed rime, like rime that hasn't gone through freeze thaw cycles to solidify. Also old and rotten rime that's been there for a long time. Warm temperatures, direct sun, high winds. So these are all things really for me, the high winds and warm temperatures. I think those are days that for me, I try to avoid any of the routes like Lutholds or the Reed head wall where there's going to be a lot of rime above you. Someone says high winds made Luthold very bad Saturday morning. Yeah. How would you recognize recently formed rime? When I wrote that, I was just thinking in terms of the weather, like, so that the photo with the sort of rime palm trees, that was like November or some month like that, where, you know, Hood hadn't been climbable, and then there were a bunch of storms, and then I went up there, and then there were like the rime palm trees everywhere, and they were just breaking off. So it's not so much about like looking at it and seeing that it's new, but just kind of keeping track of the weather. What is considered high wind? Two people asked that. And what is my high wind threshold? I don't know how to answer that. I think for a route like the Reed or something where you're just underneath all of these rime formations, you know, it could be really bad with say like 30-mile-per-hour winds if there's something else making it unstable. Or if it's really cemented in there and good, then maybe the 30-mile-per-hour winds wouldn't matter. So yeah, I guess a good thing to think about, like, say you're actually climbing, like you want to climb the Reed head wall and you're at Illumination Saddle. What should you do to figure out, you know, if the falling rime is going to be a problem? There's a couple of things you can actually do. You can speculate in the chat. There's two things I always do. Yeah, Liz says, hit it with your tools. Yeah, so like, you know, go over to somewhere where the rime has formed and like whack at it and see how stable it is. Yeah, and people are saying like stop and listen. I think that's the big one for me. You know, sometimes you go to Illumination Saddle and you can just hear stuff like crashing down. Obviously, that's probably a risky time to climb. Other times it's like dead silent. That's what you want. Yeah, so the last time I was there, it sounded like a waterfall. Yeah.
Not good.
And okay, one more thing. How does the topography of this route magnify problems with falling debris? We kind of already covered this. Yeah, it's a chute or a funnel or terrain trap. So yeah, this person's beneath all of this rime that could fall off. Okay, one more note about icefall. There's too much text on this slide. Compared to mountains like Rainier, you know, we don't really have a lot of problems with like falling seracs on Hood, but they can happen. You know, there are things on the PMR website, like missions we've had where people have been sort of crushed by pieces of glacial ice. And if you find any sort of feature where you can, like, I'll say go inside of the glacier, then this is a really big risk that you're running, especially if it's warm out. Yeah, here was a call from October 2020. And yeah, this is on the Elliott Glacier, somewhere on sort of the Sunshine Route. This is, in my opinion, a weird time to be here. But there's all these kind of steep glacial features that could break off. I guess we should expect them to break off eventually as the glacier is flowing downhill. So this is still a hazard on Hood. Okay, and we have a note about glacier travel as well. I'm not going to read all that. On the south side, people don't really rope up because we know where the hazards are. The Bergschrund is always in the same place. If you go onto other routes on Mount Hood, you probably want to rope up to cross the glaciers. I think that's self-explanatory. I put a lot of text there. Didn't need to be there. Here's just some photos of glaciers on Mount Hood. I think there's text. Yeah, this is on the Co Glacier. This is a very large crevasse. And this is on like beneath the North Face gullies. This is some kind of Bergschrund. So we do have these big glaciers on Hood as well when you get off the south side. Okay, and this is the last hazard we're talking about, rescue complexity. So we'll just talk really quickly about sort of the standard PMR rescue, which would occur in the crater. Like say you're climbing the pearly gates and you slip and you fall and you break your leg and you can't walk out. We have like a very established practice protocol for how to deal with this. The subject is going to be placed in a litter. We're going to use people to basically drag the litter downhill. It's going to be on belay using our very long, very heavy 600-foot rope. This is a relatively simple procedure. But as soon as you get away from the south side, I think you really don't want anything to go wrong because the whole rescue process is going to be much more complicated. Here's a photo from Illumination Saddle from the same day as the previous photo with the Avalanche. This was a lot more involved because, of course, there was the sort of lingering avalanche hazard. There was the fact that we had to cross a glacier to get there. We had to raise the litter up the slope to Illumination Saddle. So the complexity really quickly sort of, yeah, it grows. It gets a lot more complicated. Okay. Subjective hazards. Yeah, attempting other routes. I'm not going to read this one either. You need more technical skills and experience in gear. I think we've hammered this point home enough. Okay, we're going to talk really quickly just about a couple like peculiar challenges about doing technical climbing on Mount Hood. This is maybe useful for the people who are asking about kind of obscure routes like Yoakum and the Black Spider. This section will apply a little bit less to, Cooper Spur, the people who are asking about that. So 3 things that stand out to me that make climbing on Hood sort of challenging. First of all, there's rime everywhere. We keep talking about the rime, but sometimes it's really difficult to know what you're climbing on. Another challenge is that the rock is, of course, really bad. It's hard to assess whether your pro is good. Thankfully, all the standard Mount Hood climbing doesn't involve touching any rock. So you don't have to do this unless you're doing kind of obscure stuff. The third thing, the conditions are just really variable. So you can have routes that are basically very reasonable, and yeah, maybe this does apply to even the moderate routes, like say Lutholds. Some days you could climb Lutholds and the snow just is not suitable for pickets. So the conditions are strange and change, and sometimes something that should be pretty simple, like there's no way to protect. All right, so we have some photos. So yeah, this, is it rime? What is the guy climbing on? Is it rime or is it water ice? If you want, you can speculate in the chat. Someone says alpine ice. Yeah. So I think, what did I write? Nobody knows. When I look at this photo, obviously there are some rime formations like off to the sides, and then the ice like in the gully on the right side looks like also a bit rimey. But there's also these nice clear patches where maybe the rime has melted and refrozen enough to create what quote water ice, the kind of ice people are supposed to climb. So yeah, it's really difficult to tell. It would be nice if we could just say like we don't want to climb on rime and have that be the end of it. But if you climb on Mount Hood, you're probably going to end up in some situation like this where you're not really sure what you're climbing on. Yeah, and here are just some weird things we've heard, like during a rescue, like, oh, the climbing was easy, but a foothold just randomly broke. And something I heard very recently, someone was describing climbing something steep, and they said it was really weird when I swung my ice tool in, the ice would just break off. I couldn't get it to stick. So like these are people who don't realize that they're climbing on rime. They're expecting like water ice, and instead they're climbing on frozen clouds. So yeah, just again, another little disclaimer. It's really important to learn how to ice climb on a top rope in a controlled environment, not Mount Hood. Okay, here's a slide about the rock quality. This is the summit of IROC. It's like this teetering block in the back. Allegedly, this is the most solid rock on the mountain. That's what they say, but it's just horrible. So yeah, once again, only really obscure Mount Hood climbing requires touching the rock. Okay, and here's just a photo illustrating some variable conditions. So what are we seeing in this photo? There's a bunch of things. Yes, so we have some rime on the left. It's a chicken heads, yeah, little rime blobs on the left. Someone said wind loading. Someone said wind scouring. Yeah, so there's some kind of wind affected snow on the right. And yeah, actually there's another sort of clue, like there's this little mysterious dark area here. So this could also be some kind of heat vent or fumarole situation. This is on the east crater rim. So yeah, this is just a demonstration of like how we can have some very different conditions in a really small area. Wind affected snow on the right and hollow rime on the left. One way that the variable conditions make things challenging frequently, in my experience, are if you do like a section of steeper climbing on Mount Hood, you might be thinking like, oh, this is really reasonable, like there's good ice or something. But then these sections are always followed by like a big open bowl. So here's a picture of, on the left, this is the Frick Amos route. And there's good protection, there's ice screws, there's occasional rock protection. And then when you get above this sort of crux pitch, then you're in this bowl that's just really sun affected, and it's just like loose snow. Not good for pickets. There's nothing to put an ice screw in. So things can just transition really quickly from being reasonably protected to very difficult to protect. This is something to think about if you are planning on doing any sort of climbing like this. All right, now we'll do a quick overview of the routes. So this is a little bit, we're trying something new this year. Sorry, first, all right, we have to have another slide. Something else first. Yeah, we have to talk about our familiarity with the South Side. It's really important to be familiar with the South Side routes, even when you're climbing something else. Based on what people are typing in the chat, it seems like everybody is. But typically we're descending the South Side no matter what we've climbed. A kind of bad reminder of why this is important was this kind of famous accident in December 2006. There were three very experienced climbers who climbed the North Face gullies. They were not from Oregon. I think they might have been from the East Coast. I'm not sure. But they climbed the North Face gullies. They became trapped in a storm. Yeah, someone says Texas. That sounds right. They became trapped in a storm. They were unable to find the way down, which, having been up there in whiteout conditions, yeah, it did make sense. Everything just looks the same. One of these people was discovered in a snow cave. The other two are still missing. So yeah, kind of a gruesome reminder, but it's good to have the south side descent really dialed. In ideal conditions, it should be easy to figure out, but of course it's complicated by bad weather and darkness and exhaustion and all these things that can happen, if you take a long time to climb something hard. Okay, here's what we're trying. This is different. Yeah, the other two have never been found. All right. Everyone will tell us in the chat what routes are visible. This is just the satellite imagery from Google Earth. So let's try to label all the routes. All right, yeah, someone says, I'll sort of call things out. Someone says West Crater Rim, that's over here on the left. We've got Y East on the far right. Of course, we have Pearly Gates, Old Chute. We have, Devil's Kitchen 1, Devil's Kitchen 2. The next slide has all these things labeled, don't worry. Steel Cliffs. The chat moves very quickly. Yeah, okay, Icefall Chute. People come up with names for all sorts of things up here. There's some others that no one has said. For all the people asking about obscure climbs, there are some obscure climbs in this photo that no one has mentioned.
Probably not a mountain project either.
Yeah, maybe not. Someone says, yeah, you can top out the reed over here on the left. Yeah, Castle Crags. Okay, that's this buttress on the left. Okay, so here's the same photo with some Microsoft Paint annotations. All right, yeah, so we have Devil's Kitchen head wall, like these various exits out of the crater. West Crater Rim, Castle Crags Direct. This is a very obscure route. People say it's like climbing Yoakum in the winter. It's also in the Northwest Oregon Rock book. It says it's 4 pitches of 5.7. I don't think many people have done that. Another obscure one, we have Steel Pillar, which is in the Muley book, climbed by Wayne Wallace, maybe never repeated. It says Alpine Ice 4, so it could be steep. Also Men of Steel, nobody said Men of Steel. This is kind of similar to the other Devil's Kitchen headwall variations, but a little bit steeper. All right, moving on to the east side. Here there are only 4 things to label. We'll get into the Black Spider labeling in a minute. But what are the four things to label here on the east side? Yeah, okay, Black Spider. Black Spider is like this big wall with the cirque. Cooper Spur on the right. Yeah, Newton Clark head wall and Y East. So yeah, the Y East face is the big feature on the left. Then we have Newton Clark head wall. Then we have the Black Spider. Then we have Cooper Spur. Newton Clark head wall. I think this is like a ski objective. I'm not really sure. Okay, and then here's a picture of the Black Spider. For all the people who want to know about the Black Spider. All right, we can label the routes. I have to draw them in because I didn't make a topo. All right, someone says Frick Amos. Yeah, Frick Amos is going to come up into the bowl, and then it's kind of in this shaded cleft back here. So there's Frick Amos. Any other Black Spider routes? Liz says Center Drip. Center Drip comes up here. It goes on either side of this little buttress and then into the bowl and up the rocks out of the bowl. Someone besides Liz needs to name some Black Spider routes. All the people who were asking about the Black Spider. The chat is oddly silent. Someone says best time to climb. It's frozen. Okay, yeah. All right, Liz is the only one who knows any routes. Arachnophobia. We'll talk about this real quick. Sounds like most people are probably into the other routes. Arachnophobia goes up so the central ice flow, and then there's like this direct variation up the ice through the bowl. You exit back here. During the first ascent, the ice on the second step up here was not in, so they did some weird stuff out on the rock like this. Liz also says Black Widow. To be honest, I don't know where that is. It's like up here. I think you can't see it. It's like behind this little rib. Yeah, Liz got all of them. I think she might have assistants though, is my guess. She says 3 little monkeys. That's this thing here. And Elder Russell was climbed in the summer as a rock climb up this buttress somehow. Okay, so yeah, best time to climb this right now. This photo is from a week ago. This is, yeah, if you're into like ice climbing, this is the place to be on a cold day. These routes like Center Drip, it's kind of like Water Ice 3 the whole way. Arachnophobia, basically Water Ice 3 the whole way. Frick Amos, there's some maybe Water Ice 4, like sustained vertical ice in there. Yeah, the best time to climb this is when there's ice on it, which maybe it just hasn't been climbed enough for people to really know. But yeah, it was climbable in December recently, and it's still climbable right now. All right, moving on. If people have more specific questions about that, I can try to answer them. Here's the north side. Here, there's a lot to label. All right, start calling out routes in the chat. Our audience participation is waning a bit. All right, yeah, we have Sunshine Route, Cooper Spur, Elliott Headwall, North Face Gullies, Cathedral Ramp, thank you. Snow Dome. Yeah, that's not really a route, but this thing is called Snow Dome. Cooper Spur, the Pencil.
Pencil's in there, yeah.
Yeah, Cathedral Ridge. Yeah, that's this ridge over here. Yeah, did we miss anything? Oh, yeah, I think we missed Ravine. Oh, and that, yeah. Okay, we'll just go to the next thing where it's all labeled. This is kind of a weird perspective. I think it would be hard to actually see the mountain from this angle unless you were in a plane. So on the left, we have Cooper Spur. On the right, we have Cathedral Ridge. The Sunshine Route, this is kind of the other moderate route here, just following basically the lowest angle part of the Elliott Glacier. So Sunshine Route is a nice, like, steeper route, but not no ice climbing. Same with Cooper Spur and Cathedral Ridge. The North Face Gullies just stick to the left of this big sort of rock feature, which is called the North Face Cleaver. The North Face Cleaver is in the book, but I don't know a single person who's climbed it. The Elliott Headwall, also allegedly in good condition right now. My friends climbed it yesterday. This is a place with lots of ice climbs. Also recently, people have been doing these ice climbs sort of from the Elliott up onto the Cleaver. So these would be the Pencil, Cathedral Ramp, Ravine. These are pretty short routes, but maybe difficult. Yeah, and then we also have the Co Glacier down here, which people try to climb in various times of year, like the fall. If you go in the fall and it's really cold, So all the snow is melted and it's just like exposed glacial ice. There was a photo of this earlier. I guess if you want to climb steep glacier ice, this is where to go. Here's the Lad head wall. Nobody climbs this, but there is a trip report about it online. I think it's hard to get there. Let's see. Someone's asking, what's the north face slope just below the summit from the old time pics? That pic is in the presentation later. That's Cooper Spur up at the top. Scott's going to talk about that in a bit. Let's see. Yeah, someone asked what Elliott head wall lines are in. I think the one on the far right side. Okay, and the west side. This is the last one. What are the routes that are visible? This one's pretty easy. There's not too much. Yeah, Yoakum, the big ridge in the center. Sandy head wall to the left. Cathedral Ridge is now on the left side of the screen. Reed Glacier is on, this is the Reed Glacier. The head wall is any of these gullies above it. Leuthold being the leftmost gully. I think that's everything. I guess Castle Crags is still in here. Okay, here's the west side. Okay, yeah, so now we'll go into more detail on basically just a couple routes. Seemed like there was a lot of demand for like Cooper Spur and Leuthold and things like that. So we have some slides on those. Scott is going to cover those. We'll talk about Devil's Kitchen head wall. And yeah, then if there's any, I think that's kind of the end of the presentation. So if there's any like really specific questions, we can cover them after that. Yeah, real quick, here are some resources to learn about different routes. Books, we have Oregon High by Jeff Thomas. I see that this book now sells for over $100 on Facebook Marketplace. There's also the Mount Hood Climber's Guide by Muley. And then, various like Falcon guides, like climbing the Cascade volcanoes. They'll have some information about Mount Hood. Websites. For me, I think Cascade Climbers is like this really great website. You've probably found it if you've Googled like any sort of Mount Hood route. People have been posting trip reports on this website for like 20 years. So it's like this nice historic repository of information. And it all like stays there. It's not like social media where it disappears, but yeah, Cascade Climbers, it's great. You can read like trip reports about anything. Mountain Project has some Mount Hood information, but there's a lot of routes that aren't on there. Various Facebook groups, of course, you could try to get information there. All right, now going over to Scott.
Okay, so we are going to cover some moderate slow routes. Unfortunately, we can't cover all of them. We didn't have that kind of time. But today we'll briefly talk about, at a minimum, Cooper Spur, Whiteouts, Leuthold, and a little bit about West Crater. Not sure about Sunshine. We'll see. And just to point out, this photo was taken by Andrew Delabure, who's actually, I think he's in here in the room tonight. So he took that photo of my party going up Leuthold like around, I don't know, last weekend, I think. So thanks for that. It gives a pretty good perspective of Yoakum Ridge and sort of the couloir itself. All right, next slide. So here we go. Here's that old time photo you talked about. So this is the difference of 1894 and 2021 on the finish at Cooper Spur on the summit. This is us going to the top in 22-1. I particularly love the sass on this dude with his alpenstock pointing up in the air and his top hat. That's pretty cool. So routes do get jammed up on Hood, and they've been jammed up in a century that none of us are even alive in. All right. So Cooper Spur. So if you take the car shuttle approach from Tilly Jane to the south side, there's no glacier travel, no open glacier travel, I should say. And that's a rough paint sort of scribble of the route. This feature that we're napping under is Tie and Rock, and You'll see that in the guides as a spot to, you know, assess the route a little more closely and figure out if you're going to rope up or not. So that shuttle situation is kind of a pain, but it is nice to be able to avoid the descent on this route because it is a bit treacherous and it gets a lot of early sun. And with that early sun, you know, you're going to run into problems with just the surface conditions, avalanche concerns. We saw a photo earlier of that huge avalanche crown on Cooper Spur. So that's, you know, definitely a feature that can avalanche. Rock and icefall hazard. So as you can see, sort of up through here in the top near the summit of in the finish, that's called the chimney section, and those are just big tall chimneys of essentially loose rock, and they're not really welded together by rime all year long. So that can definitely be a problem. This can be done on a long day climb. I also want to say that it is possible to start at Timberline, go across, traverse the White River Glacier, Newton Clark, and then gain the ridge, do the Cooper Spur, and then descend on the south side. So that would avoid any need for a car shuttle. It doesn't necessarily add a lot more time to the route itself. And it's just kind of nice because it's one car, south side, you're done. But with that comes, you know, the ability to, you're going to need the abilities to travel and navigate crevasse terrain. You're going to know how to do crevasse rescue. So with that sort of logistical savings, there's going to be some skills that have to come into play there as well. And some of the moderate routes, there's not going to be as much current beta as there would, say, for the south side. Okay, let's see. Brief slide on Whiteouts. So several different ways to get there. One is you can gain the East Crater Rim from Devil's Kitchen Headwall Variation 3, or what's called Flying Buttress, or Whiteouts Face. So through Devil's Kitchen, there's no Glacier Travel required. Through Whiteouts Face, there would be, because you would have to cross the White River Glacier. So if that's a determining factor in you wanting to climb this route or not, there are options. It is also sun-facing, being on the east side. So starting early is pretty important, and getting through this crux section especially is important as the morning goes on. And speaking about the crux, it's a really exposed traverse. It's very airy. It's in good conditions. It's not too bad. You can protect this fairly easily with pickets, but sometimes it can be icy. And once you finish that traverse, there's going to be a long, steep snow ramp that's going to take you up to the summit ridge. Yeah, like I mentioned, so pickets and some screws if you want to pitch this out and protect it. I would always recommend that to err on the side of safety. And yeah, and the route is climbed without protection in good conditions by skilled parties. So if you have any questions about that, you know, protect it. All right, next one. So this is for Luthold. This does require Glacier Travel crevasse rescue skills. This is the upper section above the hourglass, and you can see you know, part of Yoakum Ridge illuminated by the sun here. So as you can imagine, as the sun hits these slopes, the upper portion is a giant funnel that we've kind of seen a theme about tonight with some of these other routes. This ice is just going to fall straight down and get basically funneled into a pinch point of the hourglass. Definitely avalanche prone. We've seen evidence of that tonight as well. Let's see. Yeah, so going through the hourglass too, there's definitely going to be a runnel flowing through there, and typically it's scoured down to ice and some rock. A few days ago, there was definitely ice and there was very firm snow. It had been scoured as there was ice was like actively flowing through it. When we went through, we had to make a couple of big steps to get across and swing into the ice and the firm snow to sort of get out of the firing line. And it was important that we did that as quickly as possible. as safely as possible while keeping a cool head too. Okay. Yeah, and we can ask more questions about those moderate routes a little bit later too. Matt's going to cover these moderate ice routes.
Yeah, we will talk really quickly about Devil's Kitchen Headwall left, or variation 1 of Devil's Kitchen Headwall. I just kind of want to plug this route because I like it so much. So, okay, Devil's Kitchen Headwall variation 1 in the photo. It is like this central sort of cleft up through the rocks. This is a great introduction to alpine ice climbing on Mount Hood. Of course, you should already know how to climb ice before doing this. This is basically just an alternative route from the bottom of the crater up to the summit. There can be 1 or 2 pitches of sort of moderate ice, maybe alpine ice 2. There's a 15-ish foot crux section that can be somewhat close to vertical. It can be a little bulgy, so there can be some brief vertical steps. Here's just some photos, I think. Let's talk about the hazards. We've basically already talked about the hazards. What are the obvious things? Yeah, there's a lot of overhead rime that could flake off in this photo. The rime is in the sun, so maybe we're expecting it to start breaking off. The conditions in the gully itself are pretty variable. So when you climb this, it's pretty common to have like one of your feet will be in like deep powder, and like your other foot will be on like solid ice, and then your hand will be on a rock or something. Like all these different conditions concentrated in a very small area. All right, and yeah, another thing about this route that I think now that I see what I wrote, it's hard to see the crux from below when you're in the crater. When you're in the crater looking up, you can see it, but you can't really tell what it's like. So I know if this kind of climbing is like at your limit, it's kind of easy to like go up to the crux and then realize you don't want to climb it and then have to find some way back down, which can be difficult. Another thing on this route, there are a lot of people on it. Last weekend, I noticed there are basically people climbing this from like 5 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the afternoon. We were up there for a long time for some mountain rescue things, and there was just constantly people in there at lots of kind of odd times to me. And it's pretty frequent, like most of the routes like this. It's common to see people kind of exceeding their abilities here. Let's see, here's a photo of the crux when it's pretty fat, just like lots of ice. It's pretty low angle. Here's another photo of the crux where it's a little steeper. And here's another photo where it's about the same. Okay, so that was all we were going to cover there. I want to cover a couple questions that people answered, and then we have a lot more photos to look at, so we can do that. Let's see. So there were some questions about the North Face gullies. Thinking I'm going to go way back to another slide with the Avalanche photo. Maybe just this photo is fine. Okay, so yeah, we'll talk just quickly about the North Face gullies. So I think in my mind, like the North Face gullies, this used to be like kind of the coveted Mount Hood route that everybody wanted to do. Maybe now it's getting surpassed by other things. But okay, so the gullies are these two sort of couloirs you can see even in the satellite imagery. So there's like these two streaks going down the face here. This is definitely like a step up from the Devil's Kitchen Headwall route, but the climbing is kind of comparable. So yeah, the North Face gullies, the specific question was like the length of the ice climbing. So both of the gullies are going to have sort of two steeper sections, one down low and one up higher. So these are the two, quote, ice steps, and then it's kind of moderate snow in the middle. So the right gully, which is the more popular one, the lower step, it's pretty long. I can't give an exact length, but my suspicion is it's over 60 meters. So most people who climb this, they're simul climbing the bottom step, and it's not as steep as the upper one. This is like water ice 2 or something. I'll try to write that. So yeah, some water ice 2 step down here. And then the upper step is pretty short. I'm gonna guess a number. I'm gonna say 20 meters. It's probably shorter than that. 20 meters, water ice 3. It's hard to draw with the pencil. Okay. Yeah, so I think that answers the question. Yeah, the bottom one is quite long. So like all of these things we've been saying, like climbing the Alpine is a place where you want to be using skills that you've practiced somewhere else or learned somewhere else. If you are like pitching out the water ice 2 section here, like placing an ice screw every 5 feet and being, everyone is like belaying everyone in sort of the textbook manner, it's going to take a really long time to get through the bottom part. So I think to climb a route like this, you want to be like very, very comfortable climbing water ice 3 or maybe even a stiffer grade than that. Okay, that was the north face question. Okay, there are more questions in the chat. Let's see. How would we grade the Devil's Kitchen headwall routes? Let's go to that. We'll go back to the end of the presentation with the photo of that. Yeah, so this thing in the book, this is the crux of variation 1, or the left variation of Devil's Kitchen headwall. The book says water ice 3 or alpine ice 3. So if you're not familiar with the ice grading system, basically water ice 3 means most of it is not vertical, but there could be like a vertical bulge for 10 feet or something like that. So unfortunately, this grading system, it doesn't really work well on Mount Hood because all of the routes are water ice 3 basically. You have to try really hard in order to find steeper ice. So yeah, this is water ice 3. In the book, all the other Devil's Kitchen variations are also water ice 3, but in my opinion, they're usually not as steep as this. The routes to the right are more influenced by the rime formation because they're sort of on the crater wall that's getting like blasted by the wind. So some of those like random gullies up onto the crater wall, sometimes they're just clogged with like overhanging rime. And I think most people would just say they're like impassable at that point. Let's see. For Devil's Kitchen headwall variation 1, are people coming down the old chute? What's the safest way down? I think that's going to depend on the day and the conditions. People are usually descending the old chute or the pearly gates. Personally, I'd like descending the pearly gates just because it's faster. Let's see. Can we talk about the reed? Yeah. Let's see. Maybe we have some. I'll go back to the reed headwall photo. It's going to get a little disorganized here, but we'll try to get to all the questions. And Scott, feel free to chime in whenever. I have to go back a long ways. There we go. Okay, here's the reed headwall. So like any of these systems of gullies. So again, in the book, you can guess the grade. It says Alpine Ice 3. In my experience, I haven't really seen that much steep ice on the reed. There are like these sort of constrictions where you go up the gully and then it gets kind of narrow and it can get a little steep and icy in there. Sometimes there are little like vertical bulges. So yeah, the terrain on the reed is going to be like lots of these sort of steep snow slopes and then these narrow constrictions that frequently form ice. Yeah, this route, it has a lot of overhead hazard. Like you see all the rime up here. People really like the reed because it's kind of aesthetic, I think. But yeah, I don't know. If you have a more specific question, I can try to answer it. Was that enough information about the reed? I think that the skills you want for this are like just moving sort of efficiently, because there's always like this overhead hazard. The one sort of nice thing about the routes on the west side is they're in the shade until later in the day, so we're not getting the sun like affecting the rime first thing when it comes up. The routes out of the crater, like the Devil's Kitchen headwall variations, those the sun hits the rime at the top as soon as it comes up, so there can be like this big increase in the amount of falling debris. Let's see. So yeah, someone's repeating a question they asked earlier. I'll get to that. Would we show the picture of the west side routes? Yes. Yeah, I guess now is the time to put any questions in the chat. We'll prioritize the questions over the more hazard photos because we've probably talked about that the most out of anything. Okay, west side routes. Yeah. So to access the things on the west side, you're going to come over Illumination Saddle. You're going to go to Illumination Saddle and then drop. Oops, sorry, I stopped sharing. I think I'm sharing it. You're going to drop down over here. The reed head wall, you're going to go up any of these gullies. Lootholds is just like the leftmost, climber's leftmost gully up the reed. Another thing I'll say about all of this, the route finding is kind of weird. There are lots of ways to like take the wrong gully and just cliff out. Like you can, go up here and then hit the cliffs and then do some weird traversing or weird down climbing or weird climbing above you. But the route finding on the reed is pretty weird. So a really good thing to have if you're going to climb any of these routes is like an aerial photo of the face. There's a really good one in the Muley book. Because yeah, like the features are kind of small enough that when you're up in here, if you have a good aerial photo, you can sort of look around and like figure out like, oh, we're on, we're to the left of this big ridge and there's this bowl, and you can sort of figure it out. Sandy Headwall, I have not climbed. Scott hasn't climbed. All right, we can't talk about the Sandy Headwall. I hear that it's basically like Lootholds, but a little steeper. This section, it has a similar hourglass section with the same hazards as Lootholds. All the debris is going to get funneled there. I think it's steeper. That's what the few people I know who have climbed it have said. To get to Sandy Headwall, yeah, one thing I'll say about this, people are always trying to make it as easy as possible, and they don't want to lose elevation by coming all the way down and around, and they try to cut across Yoakum Ridge, and then they get cliffed out over here. So yeah, I can't tell you the exact number, like a feet where it says to cross in the book, but just try to find like in the book, like I want to say it's 8,200 where people cross.
I've seen a few numbers floating around that seem to be a little bit different, but
okay, yeah. Anyway, I think you want to go under the bottom part of Yoakum instead of trying to get over Yoakum. Yeah, someone is asking this question. How do you access it? Yeah, you come down and around. Advice for yeah, I don't know how to answer that one question. Book says cross at 7,800. Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's even lower than I thought. I think if you just, aim sort of beneath this rock, I believe that's what you're supposed to do. This is, yeah, something I haven't climbed. Let's see. Yeah, there's also a question about Yoakum, of course. Yoakum, so, Yoakum is going to be this big like ridge in the center of the face. I don't know what to say about climbing this. I think a lot of people have done it, and everyone who's done it says like, I'm only going to climb that once. I'm not going to do it again. If you climb Yoakum, you're climbing directly on the rime most of the time. So yeah, I guess the useful thing I can say about this is if you want to do a climb like this, it's really important to be like familiar with the conditions on the mountain at the time. So I climbed Yoakum in March of 2012. In the previous week, I went like into the crater and I climbed Devil's Kitchen like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And I climbed like all these variations over there where I was like testing the rime and just touching the rime a lot. And so I had like a pretty good feeling like, oh, the rime is really solid right now. I don't necessarily know what makes it solid or weak, you know, over time. But like I knew that right then it was really solid, and we had a really cold day with like a lot of high cloud coverage. So we felt like we could be on the ridge for a really long time and things are going to remain solid. Yeah, that's probably all I can really say about that. Some of you saw, yeah, I think again, Andrew, who's in the meeting, took some photos a couple weekends ago of some people who climbed Yoakum. I believe they were both AMGA guides, but they climbed with a very high freezing level. The freezing level was, I think, above 10,000. And they took a long time. I believe they spent the night bivvying on the route somewhere unintentionally. And I think it probably took them a long time because the rime is not very solid right now.
Also get a good look at it if you go up Luthold or Reed, and you come out on Queen's Chair, which is the feature just basically where the top of the couloir finishes. You can get a really good look at Yoakum and see how intimidating it looks.
Yeah, let's see. What are the pro and wrap options? I don't know. There haven't been very many Yoakum pictures in here. Let me go to the end. There's probably. Actually, there was a good one. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to delete that. Okay. Okay, so yeah, this is the upper buttress of Yoakum. So there is this feature called the retreat gully, which is this. So yeah, on Yoakum, if you try to stick on the ridge, you'll sort of gain the ridge, and then you have to rappel off the side or rappel off the first sort of tower over here. And once you do that, it feels pretty committing. I don't know how you would get down from there other than getting all the way to this retreat gully. Someone's asking to draw Luthold. Yeah, Luthold is just like, you can't really see it because it's behind these towers, but where the people are headed. So yeah, this line here, this is the retreat gully that lets you get off of Luthold, or sorry, get off of Yoakum into Luthold. Also, I mentioned the route finding on the Reed. There was like a classic PMR call where some people tried to climb Luthold and then they accidentally climbed up this gully and then they ended up on Yoakum and they wouldn't come down. Okay, let's see. I think we should move on to the photos. The questions are getting a little. Yeah, can you explain more about freezing levels? Okay, so like if you look at mountain forecast, you know, it shows like the temperature and then it has a number. It says freezing level. So this is like above this, the temperature is going to be freezing, and below it, it's going to be above freezing. Sorry, I'm doing too many things at once. Okay, we're getting to the photos. Like ideally, if you're climbing anything on Hood, I think you want the freezing level to be as low as possible. If it's frozen, then there's going to be less rime flaking off. There's going to be fewer rocks flaking off. Yeah, just as cold as possible, basically. I don't know how to be more specific than that. Okay, let's talk about more hazards.
And so some of those route photos are in the hazards photos too.
Yeah, there are some photos here of routes. If people have more questions, you can ask them and we'll try to loop back, but we'll sort of wind down with this. So if people want to speculate in the chat, what are the hazards? Once again, you're allowed to you know, say we're not making good decisions in the photos. Yeah, someone says, need to think about roping for crevasses, hidden crevasses. This is me. I crossed this obviously crevasse area. And then, you know, my friend sort of went in. So we put on the rope after this. Okay. Hazards here. Yeah, we have more of this kind of undercut rime that could be hollow. There's all the weird little chambers. So this was another place where you're sort of worried about punching through and maybe losing your balance or something. Hazards here. This is center drip. Thin ice. Yeah, I think that's a good one. Or no ice. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's anything very thick over there to put ice screws in. Maybe we'll do a couple more and then just wind this up. Any hazards here?
Where's this photo from, man?
Oh, this is Men of Steel.
Okay.
Big rocks. Yeah, okay, I'm not sure what to say about this one. There's some rocks, so probably the footing is a little weird. He's touching a rock. That's weird. Yeah, I think that the audience participation is falling off. So maybe this will be the last one, and then if there's any final questions, we can go over them. This one I think is pretty hazardous, so there's maybe a lot to say about it. Oh, now there's a lot of audience participation. Yeah, there's all this like flaky ice that looks like it could break off. Excessive stoke. Definitely.
Too much.
Definitely. I'll make one other comment on this photo that one person said a few times. A lot of these photos, they said they're climbing too late in the day. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to think about. If you learned like about climbing Mount Hood from, say, the Mazamas or something like that, you probably have this idea ingrained in you, like, we're going to climb Mount Hood, so we're going to leave Portland at 10 p.m. and we're going to be, walking up at midnight, and we're going to be on the summit at 6 a.m. and then we're going to be down. And that's great. That works well, like in June when it's warm. It's maybe really important in June when it's warm. If you're doing this kind of climbing that takes a lot longer, it's just kind of inevitable that you're going to be in places like this when they're in the direct sun. Also think about people who climb, much bigger mountains where maybe they're on a route, like an ice climbing route for multiple days. There's going to be, they're going to have to figure out how to manage the sun and the warmth.
That freezing level comes into play for sure.
Yeah. So I totally agree. Some of these photos, like this one, it's like, well, this would be safer if it was earlier in the day. This is somewhere at the top of the Black Spider. So like he already climbed, he already did his morning climbing before this. Okay. Any final questions? Maybe we'll just hang out for a minute or two if anyone has questions. I'm sure I missed some questions earlier. So. Is there a talk on the south side? Yeah, there will be a PMR presentation through the Mountain Shop on just the south side, I think in a month or two. I don't think it's on the calendar yet. think that will be with Teresa and Brahms. Brahms has summited Mount Hood like 400 times or something, so he's a good resource.
Yeah, it's actually, I think I just put it on the calendar. It's on March 4th is the south side. So it's a Friday night. So
All right, I'm gonna respond to a couple questions in the chat.
Weather forecasts that show different elevations. I think a lot of the ones we provided have options for different elevations, like Mountain Forecast does. I know NOAA does.
If you're talking about the one that was like the graph, I'm typing that now. You can Google better PNW weather forecasting Cascade Climbers, and you'll find like a thread on the Cascade Climbers website where someone explains how to read the graph. Let's see. Yeah, there were some other. What type of climbing is found on the Sunshine Route? Do we have any photos of that?
I don't think we do.
I don't think we do either. There was that. So yeah, so this is like the bottom of the Sunshine Route, basically. People seem to argue a bit about where Snow Dome is. I think it's just kind of like this feature over here. Yeah, basically you're just on this glacier, like going up the lowest angle way. So yeah, it's like Glacier Travel. It's like climbing the Emmons on Rainier or something like that.
I know people bivvy at Snow Dome as well.
Yeah, there's some flat spots over here. You can fit a tent. Someone put the link to the weather forecasting thing. Yeah, thanks, Nick. There was one other question. Andrew says sunshine is 50 degrees night. Yeah, it gets a little steep at the top. We had another photo of it as well, actually. I'll go back to the other photo because I remember now. Yeah, one photo that makes it look, scary. Yeah, this is basically, this is the Sunshine Route when the glacier is totally dry, like all the snow has melted off of it. So we're kind of just seeing, well, I guess there's a little fresh snow. We're just seeing the glacial features here, but when it's really snowy, I think you can walk like either way around this rock. The time I went up there, I went to the right of this rock. But yeah, it was just like snow climbing, none of this like glacial ice stuff. Okay, still more questions. Someone says this looks scary. Yeah, this is a weird time to be here. I think like probably right now is a good time to climb it, would be my assumption. I haven't looked over there, so I'm not sure what the crevasses are like at the moment, but
someone had asked about Weiss Crux. There are some photos of that section on Mountain Project.
All right, I think the questions are finally winding down. How do we grow a rad beard like Scott's? I've been trying for a long time and I haven't figured that out.
Stop shaving.
there was one question about what your favorite routes were. Did you answer that one?
Scott, go ahead.
I don't know. I think one of my favorite routes is Luthold or probably Way East. I just love the steep, just continuous snow climb. I love the features, the way the whole route's sort of surrounded by these big gendarmes, these big towers, and it's a classic route, and you can do it in roughly the same amount of time that you can do it in the south side. So you get to start and end at the same place as all your friends, and you're going to be done at roughly the same time. And it also gives unique perspective of the other side of the mountain. And it's fun.
I was gonna say something on the Black Spider, but maybe actually Elliott Headwall. I don't know if we have any photo. Yeah, like here's a photo of the Elliott Headwall part of it. The Elliott Headwall, it's all so high that yeah, you can kind of climb interesting things up there, even on warm days, and it stays icy. At least last year, it stayed icy into May, I think. All right, I think we're done. Thanks everyone for attending, and there is another PMR presentation in a month.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much to both of you for taking the evening to just go in depth on so many routes on Mount Hood. I know people are obviously really curious. There's a lot of people on the call tonight. So huge thanks to PMR for being there for us. And thanks to everybody who joined and participated tonight. I will send out a recap email. This will be posted on YouTube so you can watch it again and look at some of the slides again. As Matt mentioned, on March 4th, we'll have the Southside presentation. So tune in for that. Yeah, if people have follow-up questions, is there a place I can direct them, or is there maybe an email for PMR or something that you would want to share? I can include like the general PMR email if that would be the best.
Yeah, I think if you have PMR questions, we could give you an email address for that for the follow-up email. I think we were like tagged in your social media posts, so you can always ask me and Scott things.
Yeah, you can certainly send us questions, on Instagram or whatever, and if we can't answer it, we'll find somebody who can.
Okay, great. That'd be awesome. Yeah, I'll send out the recap in a day or two, and we'll see you soon. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks, everybody.